Good morning. I think I'm on now. I'm so glad to be here. I wanted to say our thoughts, our prayers. When I came to Unity in 1990, not in great shape, I heard that song and I cried. And although I tend to make up words to songs, this was one song I would never make up words to or let my friends make up words to because it was so meaningful to me. So thank you for playing that this morning. Okay, dusting off your ruby slippers. I am a New York Jew. I grew up hardwired for anxiety and worry, for fearful living. And that's what I've struggled with most of my life. For most of my life, anxiety would tell me, you know me, we're buds. I make you feel safe. And I would say, I know. For most of my life, worry and anxiety would say to me, you can't succeed without us. Your survival depends on us. And I would say, I know. Now, some of you who've been here before when I've spoken might be thinking, why doesn't he get a therapist instead of using us? I'll think on that and get back to you. Anyway, there's an old joke about a Jewish mother who sends her son a telegram and says, start worrying, details to follow. For me, worrying was taking action, being proactive, was doing something, taking control. It felt like I was helping to assure success. I did well on tests in schools when I worried. When I got a job and I did trainings and presentations, I did great when I worried, and it was killing me. Then a friend dragged me to Unity in 1990, where I heard our thoughts, our prayers, where I heard Reverend Amalia Frank say, worrying is meditating on what you don't want. She said fear and faith were both invisible. So why would I choose one over the other? Well, you know, what you grow up with becomes part of your identity, or so it seems. For me, fear was home. It was the street I grew up on. I had often walked on that street before. And there's comfort on known streets, even if they are hell. Become second nature, so much so that I believed that anxiety was God speaking to me. Imagine that. I mean, that was my reality. Now I know it's not true. Unity teaches us we have a choice. And when we are in fear, we are not home. God is not speaking. That we've left home, that we're an ego, that we've separated ourselves from spirit and from our power. So many of Unity's lessons were life-altering for me, yet one of the things that pulled me in that was so familiar was a lot of the life lessons. Turned out that I'd heard them before, or had been exposed to them before, in fairy tales, in Dr. Seuss books. Folks know still love Dr. Seuss books, and especially in The Wizard of Oz. Now, back in the dark ages, Wizard of Oz was on TV once a year, and we'd all get together and watch it. Once a year. And my first talk at Community on the Hill was in 1996, was called Dusting Off Your Ruby Slippers, about how the Wizard of Oz reflected and reinforced Unity principles. And for whatever reason, I decided to dust that off and update it and live with it this month and bring it here. So, perhaps the most spiritual learning from Oz for me, which Unity reminds us of all the time, is that the gifts we seek out there are readily available to us. They are already within, right? Kept on learning it. The scarecrow always had a brain. The Tin Man always had a heart, and the lion always had courage. They didn't need the wizard, a power outside of them, to give them these things. And we don't need a guru or a priest or a minister to give us Christ consciousness. The Spirit of God lives within each of us. In fact, Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, goes even further and he says, God saturates us. Wow. Dorothy's journey is one of a dying of her human qualities to being reborn into a spiritual consciousness. Joel Goldsmith tells us that it is only necessary for someone to awaken us from the dream. What happens at the end, Wizard of Oz? Dorothy awakens from the dream. If it is a dream, you decide. Also remember, as I was writing this, Buddha means the awakened one. But Dorothy awakens at the end. I'm not necessarily saying that Dorothy is Christ metaphor or a Buddha metaphor, but part of what she learns is that if I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any further than my own backyard. Because if it isn't there, I really never lost it to begin with. Folks have heard that line before? Good. Unity reminds us that all you need you already have within you. Her own backyard was within. She already had it in here, but she was searching for it out there. Firstly, she was looking for happiness somewhere over the rainbow. It ain't there, Dottie. Then she was looking for the answer in a wizard, this big head, and it's common for people, many of us in different ways at different times, to seek refuge or answers outside of ourselves, in money, material things, drugs, alcohol, another person, sometimes in a God somewhere out there. Dorothy had put her faith in the great and powerful Wizard of Oz, who told her she had to do external labors and triumphs to be worthy and deserving. Only to find out what? Wizard was a fake. The real wizard was inside. Meaning, she always had the power to return home, and she did not need to prove her worthiness. Dottie did not need to prove her worthiness, and neither do we. In the Infinite Way letters, Joel Goldsmith writes, there is no limit to God's bounty. It is only limited when you think you have to go into the world and earn it, that you have to be deserving of it. When we separate ourselves from God, we need to create a wizard born of ego or a God somewhere out there to save us, to protect us, to give us the answer, because we're apt to feel small and scared and filled with doubt and fear. A Course in Miracles reminds us that presence of fear is a sure sign that you're trusting in your own strength. When we're in a partnership with God, co-creating, that means we are the wizard. We're not a fake one behind a curtain. You're the real thing. Now, I don't see what's in my own backyard when I'm seeing with my human eyes only, or my glasses that are tinted with illusion. So when I skip down my yellow brick road of fear, I'm acting as if I'm separate from my higher power. Separation is the problem. In fact, Course in Miracles tells us separation is the only problem. That means we've given up our power and we're vulnerable to guilt, anger, depression, all sorts of lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my indeed. Course in Miracles reminds us over and over that the greatest unlimited resources are our minds. Our minds. The most powerful device that was ever given us for change. And they are when we use them consciously and wisely. Unity writer Imelda Octavia Shanklin talks about the soil of the mind. That was a nice metaphor. The soil of the mind. And that your life is in perpetual flower, fed by the vital essence contained in your thoughts. Better thoughts will make for you better conditions than you have been experiencing. Better thoughts, better conditions. But so often the thoughts in our minds are, as one Buddhist monk put it, like drunken monkeys stung by scorpions. Have you heard that before? I love that. Think of that image. They are running amok from branch to branch in constant motion. Think about our minds. Or I can think about my mind. Going from this thought to that thought, being distracted, constantly kind of moving. Drunken monkeys stung by scorpions. An article on mindfulness I read a few years ago, it asked, what if your right arm started flailing about without your control? Would you tolerate that? And then it said, we do tolerate that up here. When I am in my head, my thoughts flailing about, I am in the witch's castle. I've given up control, power's outside of me, and it's one scary place. The Course tells us that when we're fearful, we endow the world with attributes that it does not possess. That means with trees that throw things, with monkeys that fly. When we're fearful, we're cut off from Source. And when we're cut off from Source, we operate from that unholy trinity of ego, fear, anxiety, and we think that's the truth. Ego, fear, anxiety. But enough about me. What about you? Do your thoughts reflect the belief that you're a fake? Or do they reflect your supreme wizardry? Do they reflect littleness or magnitude? If your thoughts reflect littleness, it may be time to read or reread Charles Fillmore's Atom-Smashing Power of Mind. That sounds like a superhero movie to me, but the atom-smashing power of mind, where he says, it is through the laws of mind that we form our world, for we find both heaven and hell within our own consciousness, both the result of our thoughts. There it is again, better thoughts, better conditions. Back to Dorothy and her friends, who put themselves through great trials and dangers to get what was already theirs, as we often do, to get that which is our birthright, that which is God's good pleasure to give us. But why is it to get there, we usually have to enter those metaphorical woods? To go into the darkness, the dense forest, a place of fear, but from which we come out stronger, wiser, although bruised and scraped. Into the Woods, a Broadway musical by Sondheim, addressed that. Now, I know I talked about Into the Woods last time when I quoted it. I get a lot of strength from some of Sondheim's lyrics. So I want to share these with you. Into the Woods. Into the woods you have to grope, but that's the way you learn to cope. Into the woods to find there's hope of getting through the journey. It reminds us that we go into the woods to get the thing that makes it worth the journeying. We forget what our fairy tales have taught us. Dorothy goes into the woods, literally, into the woods. We have to go, but that's the way we learn to grow. She's being asked to expand her perceptions, and she does. Maybe some of you are in the midst of dark, scary woods right now. I bet you've been there before, kind of the human condition. Remember, everything you learned there will help when you return there. What do you need to remember from your past visits to the woods that will help you today? Perhaps it's as simple as, this too shall pass. Going into those dark places can help us, as Robert Browning says, release our imprisoned splendor. That we have greatness, prosperity, peace, and power at every moment if we make certain choices and use our thinking to own the truth of who we are, which is powerful beyond measure. So let's go back to Oz. They're all quivering with fear. They finally get in to see the Wizard of Oz. And they're standing in front of this wizard, this big head. Dorothy introduces herself. I am Dorothy, the small and meek. I am. I don't know how many times I've heard in Unity that that's the supreme affirmation. We must be careful to use it as one minister said, an upbuilding force. That is, careful of the words we speak that follow those sacred words. I am Dorothy, the small and meek. She disowns any power. Earlier, Glinda asks, are you a good witch or a bad witch? How do you use your power? For good or for evil? Dorothy says, I'm not a witch at all. I don't have any power. How many times do we act like Dorothy and disown our power projected onto others? It's Glinda that tells us she has an awesome power that is hers alone. She's wearing the ruby slippers. You've always had the power to go back. She wouldn't have believed me. She had to learn for herself. That's pretty insightful stuff for a woman who travels in a bubble. The answer was there all the time. It reminds me of Joel Goldsmith's line that the Spirit of God is closer than breathing. But Dorothy is a soul that has forgotten her divine identity. And at times, haven't we all? So I ask you to think, at those times when that's happened, who of the Glindas been in your life? Perhaps some mighty companions who are sitting here now, who've reminded you of your power, your potential, your divine identity. You know, we're reminders of that for one another. Now, it's not that Dorothy doesn't show her power, but notice when she does use her power. She uses it to protect Toto. She's scared of the lion. He roughs up the Tin Man and Scarecrow. But when it goes for Toto, shame on you for picking on a poor little dog. Then at Oz, they're all scared standing in front of the wizard. I am Dorothy, the small and meek. I have no power. But when the lion faints from fear because of the wizard, she forgets her smallness and meekness and tells the wizard, you ought to be ashamed. Now, she's really big on using shame. I'm not suggesting that, okay? I am not suggesting that. Coming from the fields of HIV, really, okay? My point is that even though she introduces herself to powerful Oz as Dorothy the small and meek, she accesses her power by using it to protect others, those she loves. Dottie, like me, perhaps like some of you at times, had trouble using the power for herself. But when she leaves the woods, she's learned that there is power within her. She is able to access her power by using it to protect others, those she loves. But again, once she leaves the woods, there's power within her, and not in what Joel Goldsmith calls the outer world, the world of appearances. And maybe that's why we have to go into the woods, to learn for ourselves, to reclaim over and over again our power, our divine identity. Dottie schlepped over the rainbow to learn that. Some of us travel even further, face even darker things than she did, to grow into spiritual awareness of truth. Unity gives us the tools to get off the yellow brick road by directing our thoughts much more quickly, by helping us observe and then ask, Roy, do you really want to go on that yellow brick road again? Well, yes, it is familiar. You're right. And remember, it has flying monkeys and trees that throw apples. Ooh, I don't like flying monkeys and trees. Are they oak trees? I'm really allergic to oak trees. Then Roy, choose again. So many yellow brick roads laid out for us, by others, by society, our church, our parents, our God. This road will please others. This road will keep me safe. This one keeps me invisible. This road will make my parents love me. This one will make God love me. You know, we often experience a loss of self and therefore power through years of internalizing demands and then living those expectations of someone else. Glinda says to the wicked witch, our ego, you have no power here, be gone. But of course she does, and ego does, if we give them that power. For what is not of God has no power to do anything, but it does if we give it that power. If we, quote, awaken in the morning and accept any or every thought that comes to us, if we allow our minds to be used by suggestion, by outside influences, as Joel Goldsmith says in Break the Fetters That Bind You. If we act as if we're separate from source, indeed, ego reigns supreme. Evil, per Charles Fillmore, is any thought or thing that is not of God. My wicked witch, your wicked witch, my fears, your fears, negative thinking are not of God. They're of the devil, since they separate me from divinity. The devil, as Course in Miracles defines it, is separation from God. Metaphysically, hell is a state of consciousness. As I said earlier, I once believed that fear was God speaking. But fear is not God speaking. We cannot hear God's voice and be fearful at the same time. So our unity basic belief, we create our life experiences through our thoughts. Translation, if you're on the lookout for lions and tigers and bears, you're sure to get at least one of them. When I'm afraid, I'm deceived, I'm delusional, the state of consciousness is hell, and it is not home. Fear is not our home. Coming home is what Dana's saying. It's time for us to come home, because it is our choice where we live. It is our choice who we serve. Do we serve the wicked witch, who like ego instills fear, throws up obstacles, make us suffer, separates us from love, and sends out those nasty flying monkeys? Or Glinda, who tells us we carry around an awesome power, tells us that we need to believe in ourselves, and tells us that we have all the answers within? Choose. You know, our Course in Miracle group finished reading the workbook, all 669 pages, a few years ago. It took a long time. The last chapter summarizes it, ties it all together, and it says, choose once again. And it says, to choose between your weakness and the strength of Christ in us. In every difficulty, all distress, and each perplexity, Christ calls to you and gently says, beloved, choose again. Almost 700 pages of wrangling and struggling and trying to make sense of this book. And I said, that's it? Choose again? Yep. What you believe you are determines your gifts. So what do you believe you are? Small and meek, like Dorothy? No. Your purpose is at variance with littleness of any kind, says the Course. Choose littleness, as it goes on to say, and you will not have peace, for you will have judged yourself unworthy of it. Are you unworthy of it? I started off saying fear was the street I grew up on. Actually, it was at the corner of Fear Lane and Anxiety Avenue. I recognize some of you from that neighborhood. I'm living in a better place now. Since I've attended Unity, fear still visits. Actually, sometimes I invite it in as if it were an old friend. I still choose that instead of love at times, but more than ever, the scarecrows and the lions and the tin people in my life remind me that it's my choice. You have the freedom to listen to any voice you choose. The one from childhood that says, you do not deserve, you were not enough. Or the one from last Sunday's service that said, the Spirit of God lives within you. The person this morning in the car, next car, who gave you the finger, or the person at fellowship who offers you their hand. How this day develops reflects the voice you choose to hear. And that voice will lead you to teach love or fear at each interaction. It depends on if you choose to be hostage to God, hostage to ego, or host to God. Hostage to ego or host to God. And I guess one way to summarize my message today is, what to you is worth fighting for? We have a choice. It's Memorial Day weekend. Take time and ask yourself that question. And take some time to remember and say thank you to someone who served or serves in the military, to men and women who have fought for our freedom on so many different levels, and against some pretty horrible wicked witches. So as you leave today, as you ease on down the road, I invite you to notice the ruby slippers on your feet. You might need to dust them off a bit. Then take a step down your yellow or red or celadon or teal, brick or otherwise road with the knowledge of your partnership with God. Because then we can truly sing Ding Dong, the witch is dead, and celebrate the end of ego, of fear, celebrate the end of negative thoughts. Littleness, be gone. For who we are is love and beauty and perfect health and peace. Who you are is divine. So if magnitude ain't your home, then beloved, choose again. But remember, let those ruby slippers off your feet for even a moment, and you'll all be at the mercy of the wicked witch of the West. Blessings. Time for us to be together in silence, to stop, to let our bodies be supported by the seat, to let our thoughts come and go and come and go. We don't have to solve anything or figure out anything right now. We need to be present and to breathe. Breathe on purpose. Breathe consciously. And listen. Listen to a higher voice, to that small, still voice of truth, of a spirit greater than us and yet very much part of us. The daily word says, in the silence we find peace. In the silence we find self. Joel Goldsmith says God operates through the stillness of our thinking, and that the small, still voice is heard when the outer ears and eyes are closed, and the inner ear and inner eye are open. You have been on a path, perhaps on many. As we go into the silence, open your inner ear and inner eye and listen and watch as you ask, what path do I need to step forward on? What path do I need to follow before I'm dragged onto it? And what else needs to be done by me? Spirit, today let your wisdom and your love be expressed through me, no matter my path. Today I will not be swayed by outer circumstances. I will look beyond appearances. We return to this space, to your spiritual community, to your mighty companions, with the knowledge that the power of God flows out from within me to the world. I am ready to take a step to do that which needs to be done by me. And so it is.